everyone, welcome back to Shorty on the Fly. Today I have a offering which I call the Prince of Darkness. So we got a little Halloween theme here, and you'll see it's kind of a Prince Nymph thing, but with a couple of little extra goodies on there, which I'll show you. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got a number 12 2XL nymph hook in the vise, and I've got a gold tungsten bead on there. And the first thing I'm going to do is get that secured a little bit better with some wraps of 15 thousandths wire, and I'm just going to take 5, and I've got a reason for doing that. All right, what I'm going to do is shove those all the way over and into the bead. Okay, get those all the way into the bead, and I've got a good reason for doing that, which you will see in just a minute. Next thing, we're going to get our thread, and I'm using black 6/0 Danville, and I'm wrapping right up behind where the lead is, take a couple of wraps over just to secure everything. And what I'm looking for here is a really smooth surface on which to work, and you'll see why in just a second. So now I'm going to take and run my thread to the rear of the hook. And I'm going off the reservation just a little bit for what we're calling a prince, in this case, the Prince of Darkness. Normally, you would use goose biots for the tail. I'm using something a little bit different because it's a little bit easier if you're beginning to get this whole situation worked out. What I've got here is some pheasant tail that I dyed black. Okay, it's just regular old pheasant tail, and I used RIT dye from the grocery store, and I'm going to pull off like 8 fibers. And now if you look, today I'm using my midge jaw. The reason I'm doing that is there's some couple little places on here. If I've got my hook in the vise correctly, it's going to inform me where I want to put my tail. And if you see this right here, there's this little ridge running right along there. If I lay my pheasant tail right up along there and run the tips to the back to where that ridge is and do that every time, it's going to be in exactly the same place. It ends up being about 3/4 of the length of the shank of the hook. You know, you can do it that way, but I found I'm doing it this way these days with this, and it really works well for me. So if you can find those little spots on your vise jaws, as long as you're getting the hook in the same spot every time, you can make that work for you. All right, now run all the way back up to just behind the bead, and you'll see what I've got here is a really smooth surface on which to work. For the body, I'm using black wire in medium, and I'm using medium here. This is on a size 12 hook. If I were dropping down to a 14 or 16, I might drop down to brassy size wire, but that takes forever to wrap all the way up the hook here. So I've got about a 6-inch length of wire, and you're going to have some left over, but you kind of need to, because you need to have something to grab onto to wrap with. Otherwise, you know, you get too close and you're like, oh, I'm afraid here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that right into, and on the far side of the hook, right into the bead, and I'm going to start making wraps, touching wraps, all the way to the rear of the hook. And if you'll notice, what I'm trying to do here is keep a nice smooth base. Once I get back to the rear of the hook, I'm going to spin my thread counterclockwise to flatten it out, and if you look carefully, you can kind of see it getting flat there. Okay, see how that went? Now that makes sure that we have a nice flat surface on which to wrap, which is really important when it comes to getting this right. Okay, now pull the wire out at a right angle, and we're just going to start wrapping. And what I want to do is place each wrap, kind of pull it back so that they're touching. I hate seeing wire body flies with gaps in them. Keep pulling it slightly toward the rear so that every wrap goes right up against the previous one, so that we get a nice looking body there. And you might get more complicated if you're doing a copper john, where, you know, you might have sometimes they'll wrap more lead on that, and you have to work to taper your body with the thread. We're not doing that today. We're taking the easy way out, just so you can kind of get a hang of getting those wraps right up next to each other. And I'm running that right back up to the bead. And then I'm going to take 4 or 5 wraps over it to get everything secure. And if you'll notice, you see I got a pretty good length of wire on which to hang on to, so that I can do that. Otherwise, if it gets too small, it just gets tedious and weird. Now I'm just going to helicopter to get that off. And for my wings, I'm using goose biots. I'm going to take 2 of them. This can get tricky, and if I screw this up, I'm going to walk you through the process of how to unscrew it up. So I'm going to pull 2 of these and snip them off. And now I want the wings to point up, so there's a natural curvature you can see here, and that's the way I'm going to orient these. So I'm going to pull them apart and then cross them over. This is the trickiest part of the whole fly, is getting this procedure correct and getting them measured properly. And I'm trying to do this in an orientation I don't normally do so that you can see it, but it's messing me up just a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to turn the vise toward me and lay those biots right over, get this length right, there we go, right over, and hold them with my thumb, and then come and grab with my thread. Now I might, when I take my thumb away from there, we might have to yitch them into place, but we'll see. Now, you know what, we came out pretty good there. I'm just going to leave that just the way it is. There we go. And then when I pulled, they pulled down into that space, and now I've got that classic Prince Nymph looking wing set up here. Now, a little trick that I like to do, just because I don't know how secure that is, I'm going to come in with just a little super glue, put it on the thread, and then take a couple of wraps just to make sure everything stays in place. And now we're going to come in and trim off our excess there, and then just come and cover that up with a little bit of thread. There we go. And now the final thing is the thorax, and for the thorax on this, the Prince of Darkness, of course we have to have a little blood in there, and this is SLF Prism dubbing in red. I'm taking just a little bit out, spin it on to the thread. We take a couple wraps. And then a whip finish. And there we are. Prince of Darkness. Okay, yes, I was telling somebody about this, and they say, yeah, but does it catch fish? Indeed, it catches fish. And if you look here, you can look at those. That actually kind of looks like Dracula's fangs a little bit, doesn't it? Anyway, I hope this is informative, especially on how to do those wire body flies. I will have another one for you in a few days. So stay tuned. As always, I bid you peace.